Perfect. All right, everybody. Hey, welcome back to the Not Quite Everyday Dan. We have another awesome guest, and rather than me prattle on and kind of try and say stuff, hey man, why don't you jump in, introduce yourself and what you do, and we're off to the races.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me here. My name is Jayberry Miller. I'm the co-owner and main operator here at Tuff Possum Gear. We are a family-run business here in southern Missouri, specializing in sewn outdoor gear. So we have a number of products that aren't sewn goods, but we do the stuff we do in-house is mostly sewn nylon gear for kind of bushcraft, EDC, survival, that sort of space.
Awesome. Well, and kind of like, what is your story? Kind of, I know it's probably already out there for people to, but how did Tough Possum Gear begin? What kind of like pushed you off the ledge to start making gear yourself?
It really started when I was in my early teens. My mom was a private seamstress for a group of nuns and just, family projects. She grew up conservative Mennonite, so she grew up sewing her own clothing. And
Oh.
along came me. I'm, 10, 11, 12 years old. And growing up, I would have her sew projects for me. And like, when
Mhm.
you're that age, it's like a pouch for my slingshot ammo. And well, I still sew pouches for slingshot ammo, but
Mhm.
a sheath for my wooden sword and things like that. And until one day when I was 12 years old, I brought her a small backpack all done up in uh, paper and tape and it all modeled out. And she's like, it was like the biggest, most complex project that I had brought to her to date. And she's like, all right, I will sew you this one, and then you're going to learn how to sew for yourself. And fast forward, now she works nearly full time for me. So she tried to get out of a job, but she won herself another job. Next year, family friend gave me a little home machine, and I started tinkering around. And man, I still have that first satchel that I sewed. It's pretty sketchy. Lots of Sharpie marker where there should not be Sharpie marker.
Mhm.
Uh, but it kind of went from there, from like hobby growing till 2015, and I joined a forum called Bushcraft USA. And I started posting, my DIY projects there, just outdoor gear, survival scarves and pouches. And folks were like, "Hey, like, you're doing pretty good. Like, you should consider selling in the trade blanket." And so I did that for a while until November of 2017, and got a logo made, came up with the name Tough Possum Gear because possums have pouches, right?
Mhm.
North America's only marsupial, and people need them too. And so got the logo and started out on Etsy. Was what it was for about
Ooh,
2 years before we had a website,
okay.
and that's where kind of rolled from there. And so I've been
Mhm.
full time for since 2019 now.
Oh, that's incredible. So, I mean, you full on like five or so years now,
Hmm.
and thankfully, I was gonna say, I'm assuming not no more Etsy because I've heard about what they're
No.
like as a company. Um,
Yeah.
I,
They let's just put it this way. Their prices started going up.
mm,
The promises that of the customer, the promises of what they bring to the table is very low. And
oh,
I got tired of I got tired of political stuff in my seller inbox. I got tired of
mm,
funding their lobbyists for things that are
yeah.
not very freedom friendly. Let's just put it that way. It was a joy to leave them. And then I found out that a couple of things that A, don't close your Etsy account until you've completed that year's taxes because you can't
Oh,
access your tax records after you close your account. You have to open it back up. And then B, that you're going to fight that broken shop link in SEO in Google for years to come.
mm,
So really the only way I recommend Etsy anymore is if it's grandma who does like art or
Mm,
something, and
yeah.
she should really never touch the back end of a website where she can mess things up. It's easy because you could snap a picture and add a price and be selling. And so
Right.
that's really like if you want to grow a business, just skip Etsy. The numbers don't make sense.
That does make a lot of sense. I was gonna say just skip past it. Yeah, I was gonna say the easy it's gonna work and then you're done kind of thing makes
Hmm.
sense. And I could see how probably a lot of people just jump into that because oh
Hmm.
hey, that like you said, snap photo at a price and it's going. I
Hmm.
see a ton of stuff. The one thing that that seems to be really big, at least now, granted, too, maybe I looked at a couple things on Etsy and now that's all they feed me. It's like a ton of 3D printed stuff now.
Hmm.
Which don't get me wrong, I think 3D printing is awesome.
Hmm. Hmm.
I don't have any 3D printer stuff yet, although I I I had my first the NAF's lander and they released the th print files for their scales. So now I'm
Hmm.
like, do I want to go down that road? And then who knows where? Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's yeah. I was to say, and your storefront is like super great. It's a very clean interface. Easy to navigate. I think you just added. I just saw you added what I think was trauma shears in there
Yeah.
recently.
Yeah.
There's been a couple new products that you've dropped on there.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're now. We'll come back to this, but I'm very curious about this. If there is a backpack, a Tough Possum Gear backpack that might be in our future that you're prototyping or something, can you tell us that, or is that kind of we're not talking about that yet?
Backpack. The Tuff Possum Gear backpack. I have been asked that question for
Ah,
going on 4 or 5 years now.
right.
Folks would love a Tuff Possum Gear backpack. I've finally gotten to the point where I feel like I have some sense of a combination of both what I think a good backpack makes,
Mhm.
experience with backpacks, and unique enough to like, hey, this is uniquely Tough Possum Gear, and making the connections and gaining the skill set to actually design it because.
Mhm.
It when you're just making a little zippered pouch, that's one thing. But when you get into complex designs like that, it's
Oh yeah.
to do it right. It's there's quite a bit of work in it. Even I need to take some classes over the next year or so
Mm.
to get to the point where I can do it right on a full size backpack.
And
Uh,
there's definitely that says a lot too, rather than kind of like the half, like just jumping in. Now, I know
mhm,
there's times when it's fun, it's good to jump in, but I think sometimes I think that's a great perspective where you're like, I'm not ready.
mhm,
So, because yeah, you could totally throw together something, stick it out there, and then if it doesn't go well, that's
mhm.
gonna that kind of like leaves a shadow on the brand, so to speak. So it makes sense
Yep.
to hold off.
Well, and one of the most complex things for me, challenges for me with a backpack is like a shoulder strap, like our flagship satchel, the Shackleton EDC satchel.
Mhm.
It's a 2 inch webbing strap and it's comfortable. But when you get to a backpack, now it's making contact with your back. You got to wrap it around the neck, the shoulders, underneath the armpits. And so figuring all that out of how to make that comfortable
Mhm.
for me, 172 pounds, and then someone who's like 280,
Mhm.
300, right? That like tall, short, skinny, fat, you name it. Like you got to have something that's fits a wide range there. And so that was
Right.
just my skill set was not there yet.
Yeah, I was gonna say you go from the one point of contact to five, six, or
Yeah.
more. It
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. Well,
Mapping a human being that's moving in multiple directions and flexing and yeah.
it makes a lot of sense. Well, and here's my next question, which is kind of cool because you're in your workspace. So,
Mhm.
obviously we can't see everything, but if someone steps into your workspace, looks around, what are they gonna learn about how you think and how you create?
If they know anything about ADHD, they might pick up that I'm ADHD. We're in the process of getting more systems as far as managing our inventory,
Mm,
leveling up, putting on big boy pants and doing things like Kanban systems. I've become a big fan of lean manufacturing and some of the principles with that
Hmm.
to trigger some flow and production rather than just batching things when, oh no, we're out of stock.
Hmm.
There's some of the ADHD thing of like piles or like a tub of like this project and a tub of that project, but
Yeah.
we're slowly getting there more organized. And we moved here to Southern Missouri in March. Before that, we were running the business out of three, four, five, six, 5 rooms at an old farmhouse that my wife and I were renting, and 2 or 3 rooms at my parents' place. So, we would something would get cut out in one room at my parents' place, go down the stairs, be sewn. The zippers would be sewn by my mom. We'd come to my house. I would sew it. It would go upstairs to the shipping. It would come back down to go out the door.
Oh
Now
man.
we're in all one building, and it's amazing, but we're not working around the restrictions, and so
Mm.
figuring out how to optimize that has been relieving and a whole nother ball game altogether.
They're working, and I think this is the thing I've run into this is I notice it more in older people, but younger people tend to be like, oh, if you mentioned about having ADHD, because I have it as well. They're like, oh, okay. Whereas older people are, it's a mixed bag. Some I've had it where they're like, oh, I used to have that when I was younger and I grew out of it. And I was like, well, you
Mhm.
probably just learn to because that's really the biggest thing with ADHD. You could go the medication route. Um, I don't do that. I mean,
Yeah, me neither.
I could say I self-medicate with coffee because caffeine, and I mean, and I
Yes.
only drink as much as my doctor told me 8 cups is don't no more than that. So as long as I'm below that, we're good.
There you go.
But like the Kanban board is such a great way. I use calendar block time blocking is maybe the term where it's like my calendar is like
Mhm.
that's I do that because the further you get into the weeds with it, it's so easy to like go way down those weeds and then you get stuck in the system itself as opposed to the tasks.
Yes.
And then now you're all over the place and
Yep.
and you've got this perfectly organized looking system, but everything else is not there.
Yes. Yes. Have you ever heard of the Pomodoro technique?
Yes.
Yes, I've been playing around with that with,
Oh,
25 minutes of focused, sewing or work, and then 5 minutes of whether it's answering emails or
mhm.
researching something or whatever that mean, beating up on my Bob dummy over here or, you know,
It
walking around.
it's a great way of doing it. I love doing that for like work because I'm like a hybrid remote-ish type person.
Hmm.
So, which is terrible with ADHD because then you have
Hmm.
to say I'm self-managed. Like you have to manage we're sitting here managing ourselves. So like Pomodoro works really nicely because you're like you grind it out and you're like, okay, what am I gonna do?
Yep.
The only problem that I run into sometimes is that 5 minute break sometimes has stretched a bit longer than it should.
Hmm.
And then I'm like, okay, I just did 20. Now I've done 20 off. I need to reset and it's just things like that. I know I use there's like an app on my phone called Freedom that like I use to block everything.
Okay.
So if I want to, I can turn it on and it basically like makes my phone a dumb phone. And I
Oh,
can
nice.
yeah, it's super helpful because especially
Yeah.
if I have to like work on reports or something,
Hmm.
it's very good.
Hmm.
Now, and I think too, in this, we're talking about kind of how you kicked off with Tough Possum. You kind of touched on this, but I'm curious if there's more to it. Was there a person, kind of moment or experience that kind of really approached how you do craftsmanship or problem solving?
Hmm. Hmm. It, it's more of a like I'll give a couple shout outs here. One of the first people that showed me when I was, like 14, 15, 16, that you can make things and sell them and make a living doing that was Eric All of Metro Made Goods or
Oh,
Skinth Solutions. He has a couple different brands there. Skinth Solutions, he makes really sweet like multi-tool belt pouches um,
oh,
that have like all kinds of pockets, so you can fit all kinds of extra things in there besides just a Leatherman. Um, and he showed me, he's from Canada. I've never met him, but I got to know him over the EDC forums back in the day.
mm,
Back in my early teens, I was on there, and that you can make stuff and you can sell it. So that evolved into watching Pete Roberts of Origin, Maine. Um, are you familiar with them?
I do, yeah, I was gonna say I know Origin. I don't have
Yeah,
any other projects, but I've seen their stuff and everything,
yeah.
and
Just
looks well done.
Yeah,
Very
so
good
seeing
quality.
that, there's people, bringing manufacturing back to the U.S. Was really, it still is inspirational, and he just started a YouTube channel, more of a vlog type channel.
Oh.
I'm getting more inspiration now in that, and then really it's like it's the little nuggets over time. Different different little things. I'm a big fan of Dieter Ram's
Mhm.
10 Principles of Good Design. I'm a big fan of um, really just, like I said, lean manufacturing, finding problems, solving them. There's not that big one person per se,
Mhm.
as much as smaller nudges along the way. I worked
Okay.
in a machine shop for a number of years in my upper teens. It was one guy, and then I was his assistant, and so he showed me what more a little bit of production flow and what order fulfillment looked like. Making things and then shipping them out, and what packaging and kind of some of that flow looks like. And so I've had all these little inspirations that build up to where we are today.
And I mean, too, it definitely shows. I think I think it's a great point to think that, to say, more or less, you don't have to have just one mentor.
Hmm.
You can be mentored by, like, and you don't, it doesn't even necessarily have to have like this mentoring relationship. You can have it where you're learning from what other people are doing,
Hmm.
and just kind of like growing from those things, and being able to take from different people across the board is just a great, it's a good perspective. I think that's really awesome. It's a solid answer.
Thank you.
And think it through too, like, you obviously with your gear, I have a couple of pieces I've got your belt pouch that
Mhm.
sits, it's got my Gerber center drive in a, like an extra bit kit in my center console of my car. I've got a couple of your Skittle pouches, and I have your Shackleton EDC thing,
Mm-hmm.
which is funny. My wife had commented, she's like, your pouch is kind of patinaed. It's patinaed in denim because I wear it all the time when I'm working or church or stuff like that. So it's
Uh-huh.
rubbing on my denim. So it's starting to get this like bluish tint to the back where it like
Uh-huh.
rubs against my pant leg. But
Uh-huh.
like, especially like, I love, your gear has this kind of like this, it has a very honest, like a field tested feel. It's not like it's not like, going and buying like jeans that are pre-repped. It's not beat up when you
Yeah.
get it,
Yeah.
but it has this very much of a, like, you take it, you get it, and it looks like it's just ready to use. So you're not like afraid of like breaking the crispness or whatnot.
Yeah.
How, so with that, how much of that is kind of like you kind of field testing, doing your thing with it, versus what kind of like customers or friends and family need? Like, how do how much, where's the ratio, if there's a ratio?
It's a mixture. I would say at this point, maybe 30% of the product line is just like something I came up with.
Hmm.
I would divide it somewhere roughly, thirds is cut people bringing me ideas. Like one of our best-selling pouches of just a simple pouch is the modified style 10 by 12. And that was someone saying, "Hey, I want your normal possibles pouch, but I want clips on it to piggyback it
Mm,
to a Hill People Gear Terra Humera pack." And so like a customer request like that or a customer mod, something like that.
mm,
Some of them, it's me sitting down saying like, I want a good satchel. What does a good satchel look like? And then a bunch of it is me going to classes. So a number of, especially the recent ones, going to like Nature Reliance school classes or which you mentioned earlier,
hmm,
Craig Cottle, going to classes like that and seeing like where's my struggle, where's the struggle of my fellow students. And so,
hmm.
I can go out in the woods and practice survival skills, or I can go to a survival class And now I can watch the struggle of myself and like 20 other people. And so the return on value of, okay, now that's a piece of gear that people are struggling with, that people need. The ROI on my time is just off the charts going to
All right.
classes. So I try to do that as much as possible.
Well, I was gonna say it's very cool to see like just looking up like like Shackleton EDC loadouts
Hmm.
and like what people have done with that. And I love especially like that. We talked about that. You know,
Hmm.
it's very in the sense like you have the hook and loop pat, you know, laser cut, you have two pouches, and yet that offers like infinite like for me, I have a skills pouch in there. Sometimes I'll toss in a second one, but then I have like an elastic Velcro back thing in there. So it's like very flexible. It's like, more or less almost comes across like a pouch platform where it's
Yes.
like you've made this, and I think that that's one of those things that comes across when you look through your website. You're it's really cool. It's very much a bunch of different, very awesome things that you can like. And my wife is giving me a hard time because she says I have a thing for bags and pouches, which is 100% true. We go
Uh-huh.
thrifting or something like that. It's the first place I go is always where the backpacks and bags are.
Hmm.
Um, and now, to be honest, I have not found a shoulder bag that came up against the Shackleton and was and topped it. So
Uh-huh.
that plug on you for you guys. But there's something too. You're always looking at like, oh, what about this or what about this? Modify this or modify that.
Hmm.
Um, and even like the side pouches or design choices like for those things. For me, typically an office worker, so I don't have a silky saw in my
Hmm.
Shackleton. I probably could, but I'm sure that depending where I am, management may get a little bit upset.
Uh-huh.
So it's like I have a stick of deodorant or I have a field sharpener in there just in case, because sometimes if I'm in the office by myself and I'm bored or something on the car, maybe I'm gonna like sharpen a pocket knife or something.
Hmm.
Um, which at some point a bit later we're gonna have to do a pocket dump.
All right.
But I'd love to see what you got.
Sure
Um,
thing. I
so
made sure I have my actual
yeah.
EDC on. I didn't just because it's a podcast, and I made sure I had what I actually carry on my everyday. I don't rotate stuff, so this is what I have.
That's true, because sometimes we get these. Now, again, this is not knocking a lot of the hardcore EDC YouTubers, but like their pocket dumps, it's like every day it's the same. It's like different.
Hmm.
I'm like, man, I have a tendency now that I'm finally like locked in what I have, and I'm like, that's it. Probably won't change much aside
Yep.
from
Yep.
but so kind of thinking so we kind of looking at your work, we've kind of talked about that, but like when it talks to, family work and rhythm, I love too when we were messaging back and forth and you're like, hey, I think we have stuff in common. And like,
Hmm.
we're both Christians, husbands, we have fathers and everything, kind of thinking through that. So I'm curious, like what does family life look for you guys around the Miller home? And is your wife involved in what you do? And well, I know she's somewhat involved, but kind of curious about all that she's involved in. And does she balance you out in and kind of like how that works, that.
Yeah. That's something we're trying to figure out.
Okay.
We like it is a work in progress figuring out the family work balance. My wife does the shipping for us right now.
Mhm.
And she is my working brain in that I try to keep her looped in on like my calendar and all my projects and like, hey, I have this podcast on this
Mhm.
date. I have it in my calendar, but please don't let me forget. And so she keeps me
Right.
grounded like that. Um, but like, one of the things when we worked, when we lived and worked in a large farmhouse there in Ohio, I would sometimes pull overnighters, and so
Mm.
I very, very rarely do that anymore. Once now that we've moved to Missouri and the house and business is separate, and sometimes I'm tempted to, but I'm trying to keep
Right.
pulling an overnighter. That's not really healthy. That's not. I mean, look, I ran across a statistic recently that over time change, when you quote unquote lose an hour,
Mhm.
there's like a 15% spike the next day in heart attacks, and vice versa. It wasn't quite as much of a number, but reduction across the nation, across the US, when we quote unquote gain an hour.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I
So
believe that.
yeah,
I can
so
definitely feel that.
and so when you see those numbers, man, I really need to limit pulling
Mm,
an overnighter or working late nights. But sometimes you gotta reach into the hat and you gotta pull a rabbit out of the hat because you gotta have that little injection of last minute
hmm
grind. Um, just we're in an awkward stage of business where um, we're big enough to n- almost need well, we're big enough to like need a couple employees,
hmm
but not quite big enough to where we have. I'd say we need a couple employees. My mom works full time for me. My dad's business partner and works part time. My wife works part time. I work a couple full times.
Right.
But it we're it's in that kind of like awkward growth where if I had two full-time employees, it's all over the place, you know.
Mm,
In the dead of summer, I might not have that full-time employment for them, but man, right now I could use them. So
almost like a seasonal thing might be helpful.
yeah, yeah.
That makes
But I
sense.
need skilled labor. And so seasonal and skilled labor is it's one of the more difficult, challenging things to do.
Mm,
And so we and two, we're 8 months or so into not working out of our house. And so we can finally hire,
right.
which is something we're looking forward to. Um, Hopefully this next year.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
but but one of the things that I've done some of, and I want to do a little more of, to kind of bridge that gap is like manufacturing partners. So for years now, like I don't personally sew the Shackleton EDC satchel. I have that made for me up near St. Louis, Missouri.
Mm, okay.
And but probably next year moving it to a different partner up in Montana where we have some other products made. So trying to kind of strategize the right amount of outsource and still keep it in-house, and it's something we're right in the throes of figuring out
Oh
with
man.
how to balance that and still, raise. We have a almost 2-year-old daughter.
Okay.
So she comes to
Man.
work with mama, and it's a struggle sometimes
Right.
to balance it, but we're working on it.
Well, I was gonna say that's the biggest thing is working on it, and I
Yeah.
mean taking it out of your home where now you have an office space, or
Hmm.
office space, quote unquote, that kind of separates and also a little bit more the work personal life divide. Because sometimes that's really hard when you're working from home,
Hmm.
like how are you switching, how you switch off kind of thing versus now that way. I think it's great.
Hmm.
Also, too, it's awesome to hear that she comes to work with you guys because that's a
Hmm.
fun thing too. I mean, I don't think they even. I remember when I was a kid, the whole like bring your kids to work day kind of thing
Yeah.
is such a cool idea, but doesn't happen really at all. So like
Hmm.
in the sense now, it's you're doing that where she gets to see the work ethic and things like that
Hmm.
early
Hmm.
on, which is really awesome. Now, being a younger family, do you guys have like a family tradition or something that you're like, I don't want to miss this. Doesn't matter how busy you guys are. You're like, no, I have to stop what I'm doing. Family tradition. I have to be there for that kind of thing. Is there something like that for you guys, or are you still kind of like solidifying trans traditions?
We are trying to figure out all that, what we want to do. I do make it like I only work on Sundays in an emergency.
Mm,
It's got to be full on a problem, before I do that.
okay.
Um, but we're just we're I like a phrase by Jim Rohn. I'm a big fan of some of Jim Rohn's speeches and stuff he gave back in the day, where he said, "You got to work like no one else now, so that you can work. You got to live like no one else now, so you can live like no one else later." Um,
Mm.
so making that sacrifice now to build something great, and to be able to reap those benefits later, we're putting in that sweat equity.
And that matters long term.
Mhm.
Like let's be honest, like a lot of kids nowadays, it's crazy. People I know that are teacher have told me they're like, yeah, if you ask kids in school nowadays what they want to be when they grow up, they want to tell you things like, I want to be a YouTuber or I want to be like an influencer or something like that, which are like, if we're being honest, America wasn't built on YouTube and influencers. Not
Nope.
again, of course, this is going to be on YouTube and Substack. So I say
Yeah,
that tongue in
yeah.
cheek, but like the grit and stuff. I know one of the local school systems here has like made an effort of like bringing blue collar workers in to say, hey, by the way, yeah, you could totally go to college, come out with a lot of debt, or you could go to trade school and
Hmm.
then graduate and be making six figures. If you work hard, you could grind it out and be doing really well. So I think it's a really important thing.
Yep.
No-
Mike Rowe has done a lot in that regard in helping with education around trades
mhm.
and you know, just getting kids ready for life.
I think too, yeah, and that's a lot of stuff that like, let's be honest, like do they really need to know how to use social media and stuff by the time they graduate high school, or maybe like balance a checkbook, fix, change your oil, stuff like that? That's
Hmm.
kind of a bit more important to, or like budgeting or, paying bills, kind of important.
Yep. Yep.
That's the important, yeah, stuff they don't really cover as much nowadays,
Hmm.
which hopefully we'll get, we can see a return to that someday. But
Hmm.
for now, it's kind of up to the more grassroots, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, for you with kind of like obviously being a maker and everything, do you feel like you have to kind of shift out of maker mode to shift into family mode, or do you kind of blend those two? How does that kind of shake down for you?
Um, it's one of those things where I'm always thinking about business.
Hmm.
Um, but like one of the things I try to turn it off when I get home. Especially with how I'm wired, I really have to be purposeful about doing something when I get home. So whether that's reading books to my daughter or playing a
Hmm.
board game with my wife, if I'm not intentionally doing something, I revert to thinking about business. I revert to
Hmm.
worrying about business. I revert to planning and thinking about a product design or something like that.
Kind of just automatically flows back in kind of
Yep.
thing.
Yep.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, and I mean, your kids, 2-year old and everything, which I remember some of the stuff my daughter said as a 2-year old,
Uh-huh.
which was great. I don't know if you guys write stuff down that she says. Um, should totally think because some of the stuff it's like I mean, there's been some things that like my daughter says a 2-year old that made me cry. She still says
Yeah.
stuff. She's 11 now.
Yeah.
Now, has she ever? No, I'm not sure how much she's doing talking wise and everything. I know everybody's kids are different. Has she ever said or done something that maybe gave you some kind of inspiration for work, or on the other side maybe reminded you to slow down?
Yes.
Uh,
So what like one of the things that my goals in life is to like have a family and then make them capable.
mm,
And one of the kind of like proud moments was we went to a class there at Nature Reliance School that was CPR, AED, first aid through American Red Cross. And I actually was able to join in with some of the instructor cadre there and get my instructor certification to then teach those classes as well with some ongoing education in that area. But then earlier this evening, like right before the podcast, my wife sent a little video. My daughter, she's over there in the corner doing CPR on her doll. And what started it was she had found a little piece of plastic wrap from a Kleenex box, from a tissue box, and it reminded her of the face shields for doing like for
oh
protecting
yeah.
against like saliva and vomit and stuff with CPR. So she's up there doing CPR on the doll, and that is absolutely adorable. And so it's that reminder, like, okay, in some regards, like including my family in these things, it is like I'm doing some of that right. But then
Mhm.
on the flip side, when it's Papa's going back to work after supper, like, and she would love to read books, man,
Mm.
that tugs at the heartstrings. And so trying to figure out like what's the systems I can put into place to to make that time, carve that time out, be purposeful about it.
Right, which is really super important. Kind of think of it, talking about making systems, and we kind of talked about the idea of balancing
Hmm.
already. So my next question was kind of like the hard part,
Hmm.
and I will kind of fold in that idea of systems. But what would be the hardest part of kind of balancing what you do, something that you enjoy doing for work, but also like being fully present at home? Like, with that, what systems do you have to help you do that?
That's what we're trying to figure out right now, man. That is absolutely what we're trying to figure out right now is
Mhm.
what systems, how to do the systems. If you have any recommendations, I'm all ears.
Well, I mean, it was actually a really good thing my pastor gave to me years ago. Is he's like, if you, and this was something when I was in pastoral ministry, he's like, if you do something ministry wise, make sure that you then do something equally for your family. So you kind
Mm,
of, not a tit for tat kind of thing, but you kind of
mhm,
make sure that you're balancing because if you're grinding it out, because there's a balance, like you could totally grind it out for until you retire, but if you're never home, then you retire, you're like, oh, now I can have relationship with my kids, but 30 years have gone by and now you
yep.
haven't, and so that's something where it's like this coming weekend, as I was kind of talking through the schedule, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be doing this and doing this, and then planning, okay, so I'm going to be busy doing this, doing podcast interview and everything. So then, hey, we should do something today on this day kind of
Hmm.
thing. And
Hmm.
so some of it is being fluid and everything
Hmm.
and kind of that ebb and flow. And it changed a little bit. Obviously, as an 11-year-old, there's certain things like she's not getting up at the crack of dawn anymore. Now it's like Saturday
Hmm.
rolls around and it's like, oh, it's like 9 o'clock. I'm like, I'm gonna go, time to go wake her up kind of thing. So it changes, schedule wise
Hmm.
and just age wise, but it's kind of a lot of it is also like, and my personal struggle is like not being on my phone. Like that's the hard thing. It's like not being on my phone and everything, because obviously like my daughter's getting older and so she'll point it out, but like little kids don't know it as much. And let's be
Hmm.
honest, like our phones are super tempting to grab. You're like, oh wait, what's that buzz? Like, oh, let me go
Hmm.
check. And next thing you know, you've now spent 30 minutes scrolling reels or shorts or posts and whatnot, and you're like, oh, I got to put this down.
Yep.
So even being a little bit further along, it's still a work in progress for me too. Biggest thing is and figuring out it's like within your unique family, like
Hmm.
what do you guys need? Like you have a different type of schedule, so it might be one
Hmm.
of those things where
Hmm.
it's like, hey, knocking out a little bit before dinner and then doing stories and stuff before dinner. So then when you go
Yeah.
back, say, hey, I know you'd love to read more stories, but we did get some time to do that earlier. And if you're still awake later, maybe we can do some more kind of it's something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Like this afternoon, it looked like taking a couple hours off
Mhm.
before this call to spend with the family because I'm gonna be working here after we get off this call. So
Right.
yeah.
And and balance and understanding too with your
Hmm.
wife, understanding her and communications,
Hmm.
always a
Hmm.
big thing.
For
Um,
sure.
and it's balance. And I know I was gonna say you guys have been married for how many years?
Over 3 years
Three
now.
years.
Yep.
All
Yep.
right. So, I mean, here's the thing too. I know everybody says the first 7 years is the hardest, and that I think that that's definitely true in some ways, but I think there's always challenges like throughout, and you kind of have to learn to work through those and ride the waves together, so to speak, which is an
Yes.
important thing.
Yes.
So,
Oh
so we're
yeah.
kind of shifting from family life to this is
Sure.
the fun segment. And obviously, you've talked a little bit about kind of like feedback and everything. So, what would you say is the most unexpected or maybe even like creative use someone has told you they've found for your gear?
Oh, let me think here. There was a um there was a very creative one recently and I plumb forget it. But I will here's one. This is this is the one I get the most uses, like the most like, hey, this is crazy use. This is the multi-purpose sit pad.
Hmm.
And so it's a foam sit pad with a fabric shell that opens on one end with Velcro and it has attachment points and then the backside is bright orange. And so I get a lot of like, hey, I use this for all kinds of crazy stuff. But one of them is splinting for sprained
Oh,
ankles
wow.
and for sprained arms, and they're like because you can take that and kind of taco it. It's like a really stiff
Okay.
foam taco that you can lace shut like a corset. So just I get a lot. Um, I get a lot of that kind of thing, especially with the sit pad, the multi-purpose
Mhm.
sit pad, and the multi-purpose survival scarf. Those two of
I've seen a lot of people talking about the survival scar, like a ton of people talking about that
yeah.
or posting, like just on Instagram when people are posting pictures of what they're doing with it. I was like,
hmm
that is like multi-use to the core.
hmm
Um, I can tell you one thing. I wish that I had a sit pad like that when I was a teenager hunting,
Yep.
because let's be honest, when you're sitting on that cold rock during deer season, it is just absolute torture. Because
Yeah.
once one parts of you gets cold, that's the end of it.
hmm
Then you're like,
hmm
oh, I can't do this, and you're like counting
Yeah.
down, watching. I grant to also ADHD, trying to sit still for hours waiting for a deer was also torture. So
Yep.
my dad finally said, you gotta stop moving. He's like, I don't care what you do, but you're making so much noise. He's like, you gotta read a book or something, like just don't move. And
Hold
so
still.
that's what happened. I just started reading books.
There you go.
He's
Yeah.
like, well, as long as you don't miss a deer because you're reading a book. I was like, no, Dad, I promise. I'm watching. And that's what I was doing. I was reading, and I remember getting my first deer. I was reading, there's a deer, and I actually got it. Then my dad's like, now you can drop it. Now you can drag it the mile and a half uphill.
Yes.
He's like, because
Yes.
this is your first year, you have to suffer through it. I'm like, all right, well, that works. But
Fair enough.
I was gonna say I love the idea, and that's not necessarily a product that someone's gonna really think about doing,
hmm
but so multi-use.
And I just remembered what that was. Friend of mine was he had to get cell service, and so he set a little phone booster up on top of his truck, but it started raining, and so he stuck this over top of it to
Oh,
protect the wiring because it wasn't waterproof, and so
oh,
he used that right there as like a little rain roof until he was done doing his stuff that he needed to.
hey, see, there you go,
Yep.
multi-use, which is awesome. Now, now you're into the bushcrafting and
hmm
everything. So if and I would love to talk more about. We'll have to get to that. But if you could take one Tough Possum product with you on a week-long wilderness trip,
Ooh.
which would it be and why?
Um, if I could only take one.
Just one.
I'm gonna go with that because there's
Mm.
not really like it's kind of best in class. I'm gonna go with that sit pad, man. It is my favorite product. I mean,
Oh,
like
okay.
okay, I if like the one that I should take med pouch, but like the med pouch is great, but
Hmm.
if I'm only gonna take one, I'm gonna put my first aid stuff in a gallon Ziploc bag and suffer through that, and I'm gonna take the sit pad because.
Right.
It's a lot better than a piece of like closed cell foam sleeping pad by itself.
Mhm.
Um, man, that's gonna be
Ah,
the
there
one
we
I'm
go.
going for.
I kind of was wondering if that was, I figured it was going to be, my guess is I was guessing it would be that or the maybe the Shackleton, but also
Yeah,
too,
yeah,
if you're using a backpack or something. But,
yeah.
I see you pulled up the first aid kit. And
Uh-huh.
so you have one of your newer products attached to that as well, if I'm
Yes.
correct.
Yeah. So the med pouch, it was designed to Velcro with Velcro hook to fasten inside the Shackleton EDC satchel.
Hmm.
And then over time, it comes with a piece of Velcro loop to cover it, so you can just toss it in a bag and it's
Hmm.
not snagging on things. But then kind of grew into a modular system. So then you have like a little piggybacker pouch that goes on the back there to expand the capacity, or a tourniquet wing that we recently started selling tourniquet wings that we make. So you can put your tourniquet on the outside instead of on the inside. And then we have an adapter so you could attach that to a Molly or Pals type webbing on the outside of a backpack, or on the inside of a pack for that matter.
Hmm.
So it's kind of developed into a bit of a modular system. that we're leaning into the first aid
Right.
pouch market pretty heavily.
Which is, I think it was Jeremy Sears on YouTube just posted something about like the most important part of your EDC, and it was like a first aid kit stuff.
Hmm.
And I mean, that's something that I think about too. I have my backpacks away, but I have like a little, it's like a fly fishing wallet kind of thing that's stuffed full of band-aids that
Hmm.
just migrates from bag to bag.
Yep.
Which I'm constantly emptying it because I do stuff. I was stupid. This first time I ever did this is I go and help at a food pantry, and I was bored, so I was sitting waiting because I help people bring carts, and there was a really slow point, so I was sitting outside like this, and like a car kind of zipped past or something like that, and it startled me enough that my finger just barely moved, and so like when it closed, it like just went right across the edge of my finger. And
Yep.
so I'm like, oh. And then so I'm like bandaging it. And then it was in such a weird, it just bled like it's the
Uh-huh.
whole Band-Aid turns red. So I like go in and get a glove. I'm running around and I mentioned it to somebody and they're like, oh, I have to go fill out an accident report. I'm like, but I hurt myself. They're like, no, you did it on property. I'm like, no. And so he's asking, he's like, what did you do? I'm like, I was fidgeting with my knife and I
Uh-huh.
cut myself. He's like, did anyone see you do it? I said, thankfully, no, because it's just embarrassing.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And then I was like, well, this is the first time that that's ever happened. And then, of course, this week when I was there, I was like, I came in, I like, he was off doing something. And I came in holding my hand. I'm like, hey, I need a Band-Aid. And he's like, no. I'm like, nope, I'm good. And he's like that.
Yep.
He's like,
Gotcha.
he's like, that wasn't funny. I'm like, it actually was, but I won't do it to you again. But so the thing. Hey guys, future editing Dan here. Thanks for tuning in to part one of the Jayberry Miller interview. Come back next week for part two, and we're going to see more and hear more of just this great time. And I hope you guys have enjoyed it so far. I know I enjoyed this whole thing. Can't wait to see you back here next week. Until next time.